Order. Rob Roberts to move the motion.
Thank you, Mr Hosey, and an honour to serve under your chairmanship. There is an old saying that you shouldn't talk about politics or religion, and I sometimes have to wonder whether this extends to the topic of pensions as well, where saving for a house or car is seen as exciting and a real achievement, and rightly so. The same enthusiasm and planning is never given when people are saving for their retirement. It's time these attitudes around pensions and planning for retirement changed. Pensions are becoming more and more important, and we need to talk about them both here in Parliament and in the wider public domain if we want people to feel empowered to make their own decisions about their future and secure a retirement that they deserve. People are living longer, state pension age has increased, but discussions and debates around pension policy and infrastructure hasn't really moved on in any significant way. And a recent study found that 22 million working-age adults don't feel that they understand enough about pensions to make decisions about saving for retirement, highlighting that we need to do more to ensure people feel informed and empowered to do that saving. The fact that 5 million people in retirement aren't satisfied with their financial circumstances proves that more needs to be done earlier to ensure everyone is taking steps now so that their later years are more secure and more comfortable. And that only 38% of 7 to 17-year-olds say that they learned how to manage money at school showcases that the lack of knowledge and awareness about savings and pensions starts right at the beginning. So simply, Mr Hosey, this tells us that we need to be having frank and honest conversations about pensions much earlier in people's lives. It's not enough to start discussing savings and retirement at 60. It needs to be happening in education, in the workplace, at key moments in life, and also here in Parliament to frame that debate. And today's debate, I hope, is the first of many important and crucial conversations around pensions and how we as parliamentarians can look to shape pension policy in a positive way in the years to come. In this debate, I'm going to touch on a couple of broad themes, the majority of which the Minister can respond to, appreciating that some of the topics may be for the Treasury to consider rather than my honourable friend, but are relevant all the same. Although it's hugely important to start these conversations surrounding pensions and retirement as early in life as possible, it wouldn't be right to hold a debate on pensions policy without first looking at how we can help pensioners now who may already be struggling. And sadly, pensioner poverty is a real problem across the UK. While it may have decreased over the last 20 years, and I do commend the efforts of the Minister and the Department for their work on this, data from Age UK has found that there are still 1.9 million pensioners living in poverty in the UK. This is over a quarter of pensioners who, despite having worked all their lives, paid their taxes and contributed to our economy, are now living their later years facing some more challenging decisions than they necessarily should, wondering if they can afford to turn their heating on, pay their bills, and watching how every penny is spent. But it doesn't have to be this way. For many pensioners, they'll be eligible for pension credit, a financial lifeline which tops up their income, preventing them from having to make those difficult decisions like keeping warm in their home or having a good meal. Pension credit is also a gateway to other benefits which make a real difference to pensioners' quality of life, including cold weather payments, NHS dental treatment and, topically these days, a free TV licence for the over 75s. Quite simply, pension credit gives older people the financial stability and security to live their lives in a much more worry-free manner. It's also important to note that while pension credit makes a huge difference to many individual pensioners' lives and well-being, it also has benefits for the whole of society. And research from Independent Age estimates that the cost to the government of those eligible for pension credit but not taking it is around £4 billion a year in increased NHS and social care spending. So it's imperative that we either get the implementation of this benefit right or just reform it altogether. The question is this a benefit that works effectively for the people it's supposed to serve? Currently, it's not working nearly as effectively as it could be, with uptake stagnating at around 60% for the last 10 years, and it's never been more than 70%. Put that into perspective, that's around 4 in every 10 eligible pensioners not collecting the free money that's due to them, which means that at present around £3.5 billion that's allocated to eradicating pensioner poverty isn't reaching older people each year. This is in part due to awareness of pension credit being very low, despite many advertising campaigns by successive governments, seem to need a wholesale reform to help reach the people it's designed to help. Now, the low take-up pension credit is also in part due to the way it's assessed. Instead of being an automatic benefit which is provided to those who need it, pensioners have to make a claim when they reach the appropriate age which considers their income level and their savings. This is problematic for a couple of reasons, not the least of which is that the process itself can be seen as daunting, overly complicated and difficult to navigate for pensioners. But also because by taking into account people's savings pots, it discourages long-term responsible economic actions like saving, because they'll become ineligible not only for pension credit, but for other gateway benefits that I mentioned earlier on. I believe then that we need to have a fundamental change in how pension credit is assessed and claimed. We should be looking to help those who need it most by ensuring that financial support is accessible and fair, taking away the blame on people who fail to make that claim. One way to do that would be by making pension credit a full or partial auto-payment benefit. So no claim has to be submitted, and basing it solely on income levels, which HMRC really should be able to track, to ensure that no one is unfairly at a disadvantage for having prudently saved throughout their working life. And while successive governments have taken steps to raise the profile and take-up of pension credit, as seen through the work to make it claimable online during the pandemic, I do think that we need serious fundamental change if we want pension credit to play its part in eradicating pensioner poverty and helping the poorest households. I'd like the government to consider its role in boosting take-up by making it an automatic benefit which solely considers income. Now, whilst pension credit is one important issue that I believe the government should be reviewing as we look to bring positive change, there are many other areas which I believe would also benefit from innovation and further development, and one such area would be the auto-enrolment regime. Auto-enrolment introduced by the government to improve pension savings in the UK, and it's worked. It has. It's reversed the decline of workplace pension saving. Prior to the start of auto-enrolment, the number of eligible employees who were enrolled was 10.7 million. This is now increased to almost 19 million, almost 90% of those eligible. And whilst that confirms the success of its original aims, instead of engaging the wider public in taking an active role in their workplace pensions, being auto-enrolled has meant that the vast majority of savers assume that they'll automatically have a large pension pot when they retire. But this is often not the case, and we've added a layer of what I'll call complacency risk into the mix of other issues to consider. It's the risk that people will assume that the pot that they're building up is going to get them a particular lifestyle in retirement, which may not always match the reality of what will happen. Now look, don't get me wrong, AE has been fantastic in getting pensions moving again. I really believe that we should be looking at what's been done so far as a starting point rather than an end game. Of course.
First of all, I congratulate him on securing the debate, and I accept entirely that this is a legitimate discussion about the future progress of automatic enrolment, which has transformed savings amongst women, amongst young people, in a way that they've gone from pretty much 40% saving up to 80% saving. And I agree that he is right that we are doing better than we have previously done, but it is the suggestions for the future that clearly need to take us forward, and I support entirely the direction of travel that he's taking us on.
Thank the Minister for his intervention, and the suggestions to the future are about to be unfolding before his very eyes, as he may have anticipated. Look, analysis done by the Pensions and Lifetime Savings Association suggests that the current contribution rate of 8% is simply not enough for people to have a good standard of living in retirement. I fear this is going to be the case for many people in several years' time who have been auto-enrolled into workplace pensions and assume that due to this rate being automatically set by the government, this means that they will have a comfortable pension pot when they retire. But unfortunately, many people are simply not engaged enough with their pensions to realise this until it's too late, despite them being fundamental to their future, and I fear that auto-enrolment has created that complacency that I mentioned earlier. So in order to combat this issue, the PLSA has proposed an increase in the minimum contribution level to at least 12%, and I would agree with their proposal. 43% of savers don't know how much of their monthly salary they should be saving in any case, and the increase would benefit a great many individuals by increasing their savings further. Additional changes could include reducing the starting age to 18 and removing the lower earnings limit so that every penny of earned income counts towards pensionable pay, which, according to the ABI, has the potential to save a further £2.5 billion in pension pots. This would not only increase the number of years that the individuals save for and consequently increase their pot, but would also emphasise the importance of saving from a younger age. But what else can we do with auto-enrolment? Why not have a little bit more kind of outside-the-box thinking with it and really create a savings culture in the UK? If COVID has taught us anything, it's taught us the importance of preparedness and planning for every eventuality. One of the bedrocks of financial planning is having in place an emergency fund, but putting money away each month is perhaps easier said than done. There's always something else to spend it on. Perhaps as part of auto-enrolment, we could look at including a savings element to it as well. Why not, when payroll is making a deduction for the relevant amount for a pension, why not put 1% into a savings pot at the same time? Auto-enrolment ISA, perhaps. And give people the ability to increase those percentages if they want to whatever they can personally afford. Perhaps creating a savings culture on the back of pensions policy could be one of the more pleasant side effects of COVID, as many people may be more open to having emergency funds to combat any challenges that may come up in the future. Moving on from AE, another area of pension policy I believe could benefit from further positive change are the issues relating to the annual and lifetime allowances. Now, bearing in mind this is a Treasury issue and not necessarily for the DWP, I'll not labour the point, but arguably there's no need to have an annual allowance if you have a lifetime allowance. As saving should be encouraged and individuals shouldn't be penalised for taking on extra work and saving more into their pensions, as doctors were recently, leading to them not taking on shifts and procedures because of the dangers of having a significant tax bill. A potential solution to that issue would be to remove the tax penalty for breaching the annual allowance, but keep the restriction on the amount of tax relief available to the current limits. That means there would be no additional cost to the Exchequer, and people will be able to continue saving into their pensions in the same way, yet those who are unnecessarily penalised under the limits of the annual allowance wouldn't be at a disadvantage. As I say, it's a Treasury area which I'm sure my honourable friend will take great pleasure in passing along to them. Ultimately, wider change is needed within the pensions industry, and one way to achieve this and to encourage people to engage early with pensions is by improving the accessibility and reach of financial advice and guidance. Despite having been a financial planner involved in the pensions industry for many years prior to coming to this place, I can admit the topic of pensions can be complex, and for many without this experience and knowledge, I can see how pensions can be viewed as hard to understand or even, God forbid, a boring subject. What a terrible thought. I welcome the government's push for a simpler statements regime which is coming down the line to make statements more comprehensible both for the consumer and for professionals. Members would not believe the wide range of disparate information that pension providers send out to customers, making it impossible not only to understand what you've got, but also impossible to do accurate comparisons between providers. It's currently extremely complicated, and I look forward to simpler statements which will put the consumer in charge. I just hope and keep my fingers crossed that this policy isn't several years in the making, as the wheels of government do tend to take rather an age to turn. But while it's right that we should be empowering individuals to make their own decisions about their futures, we should ensure that before such life-changing decisions are made, individuals feel informed, supported, and have considered their own unique circumstances. And so advice and guidance around pensions needs to be accessible, affordable and available. And despite the benefits financial advice can bring, only 8% of all UK adults have received it. And while that is amazingly an increase from previous years, it's still a shockingly low number and is putting individuals' retirements at risk. Now, whether this is because people feel financial advice is unaffordable or only for the very wealthy, or simply because people feel it's a risk and don't trust the financial services industry, we need to be actively working to change these perceptions and show that financial advice is for everyone. I can assure the public that for the vast majority of advisors I've worked with in the past, they'll treat someone's £30,000 pension with the same care and diligence they'll treat someone's £300,000 pot, because each sum is just as important to the individual. Indeed, the smaller pot can be considered much more important to that individual in many ways, because it will often be the only pension provision that a lower-earning individual has, and so the risks of it running out too early are much more significant. If we don't promote the need and benefits of financial advice, I worry that in 20, 30, 40 years down the line, we're going to have a retirement crisis on our hands. Recent data shows that 35% of the adult population say they don't have a pension. Out of those that do, 36% aren't sure how much is in their pot. But even more worryingly, the uncertainty around pensions goes further than individual circumstances, with almost half of the population admitting they wouldn't have a clue how much income they'll need in order to retire comfortably anyway. Clearly shows that widespread advice and education regarding pensions and retirement is urgently needed if we want the people to be able to live out their later years in financial security and comfort. Now, in the past, these type of financial decisions and risks were shouldered by employers, pension providers and life companies. But now, with the advent of and the introduction of greater flexibility and freedoms to the pensions marketplace, it's increasingly down to the individual, which is a wonderful thing in some respects, but also very worrying in others, because for such important decisions, we shouldn't really be placing all of the responsibility onto the people. Instead, we should be ensuring that people feel supported and know where to turn for help and advice. And financial advice isn't only needed to help people feel more informed and aware when making decisions which will affect their lives. It also adds real value to people's pensions, providing them with a better retirement in the long run. A recent report by the International Longevity Centre has found that those that have sought professional financial advice are better off by an average of £40,000 in their pension pot compared to those who did not seek advice, which is not an insignificant amount. So, ensuring that financial advice is seen as a viable option for people is not only the right thing to do, but it's crucial if we want people to have the best possible future, as well as the peace of mind that they're making the right decisions to benefit them. But most importantly, how can we make sure that people are accessing the right financial advice and support? Forcing people to access support, well, that's not an option. Some people won't even take a vaccine to save lives, for goodness sake. So mandating things just because people have an inbuilt aversion to being dictated to, mandating things just doesn't work. But one option, however, is to encourage individuals to use guidance services just like PensionWise, the free and impartial guidance service that was set up in 2015. Accessing guidance is often a first step towards accessing full financial advice and should be greatly encouraged. Seeking guidance helps people gain a good initial understanding about their options and helps boost people's confidence in their ability to do things like avoiding pension scams, which sadly we know is an all too common problem. In addition, we know that financial guidance is a great enabler for the full advice process. Data from PensionWise's user evaluation report recently has found that 36% of appointment customers with PensionWise went on to speak to a financial advisor in the following 3 months, compared to only 22% of non-users. That highlights that we need to emphasise the benefits of these services and ensure that people use them as early as possible to improve advice take-up and improve the financial outlook for many individuals in the UK. Currently, it's far too easy to opt out of taking this free guidance from PensionWise. And many studies over many years have shown that individuals need several exposures to information before they'll start taking action. So perhaps we need to start them on that journey a little bit earlier, so that they're engaged in the process when the time is right. Of course.
I'm extremely grateful to the Honourable Gentleman for giving me and for leaving me intervene on him. And can I commend him on his speech? It shows some great expertise in this very important policy field. And I think he's right to press on this issue in terms of financial advice. Does he agree with me, though, that there should really be a greater role within the education systems of the respective countries of the UK, so that our school children leaving school are financially capable? And when it comes to pensions in particular, the earlier people start saving for their pension, the better. So their interventions need to be happening far earlier than they do.
Absolutely, a very salient and very, very welcome intervention from the honourable gentleman. I completely agree. We need to start financial education in schools around the more basic things. What's a current account? How do they work? What's an overdraft? What's a credit card? Because the amount of people who are leaving school and university already in massive amounts of debt before even taking into account university fees and things is staggering. And if we're not getting people on the right footing, I completely agree with the honourable gentleman. It's definitely something that we should be looking into developing completely. Now, look at that now. I've lost my place, although I appreciated the gap to take a drink. But, as I say, people need to take this journey earlier. And during my research for this speech, I came across an article from a few years ago with a picture of a very young-looking, fresh-faced pensions minister supporting... No, it was you, honestly. Supporting one provider's midlife MOT concept. Engaging with the UK population as a matter of course when they hit particular ages could be a transformative idea. Imagine the benefits to speaking to someone aged 45 when they may be in a more stable home and employment situation after those expensive years of having young children, and providing some guidance to them as to things that they should be looking at from a financial point of view. That could have a significant impact on their outlook towards pensions and financial planning for the still 20-plus years that they have to go until retirement.
Will you give way on that?
Of course.
So I'm conscious that this job has aged me a great deal, and that I'm a great deal different to the fresh-faced photograph that was taken in 2017 when I first got this job. I have no idea in what way, aside from the lockdown stone, why it is I've aged so much in this job. But in terms of the midlife MOT, which he refers to, can I point him to the Aviva trial and the various trials done by private sector, where they started out as an HR benefit to employees, but they actually found that the benefit of the midlife MOT into the particularly employees was good, but the benefit to the business and also to the wider state in terms of wealth, work and well-being, the three things it's measured on, was utterly transformational. And I would certainly encourage all businesses to follow the initiative of those companies, and all the public sector to follow the initiative of DWP, who've pioneered the midlife MOT as well.
Absolutely, and I thank the Minister for his intervention. It was indeed the Aviva article in which I saw the fresh-faced youthfulness, who has now turned into an advert for Just for Men. It's working very well for the Minister. It's beginning. But he's absolutely right. Look, adding a health review to that midlife MOT process could also have untold benefits to catching illnesses early, encouraging people to change their lifestyles before problems occur. And I completely endorse the Minister's support of the midlife MOT process and encourage him to work across departments to put something together in that space that could drive real change, both in terms of financial and medical well-being. But just like the banking and financial industry has developed and adapted to the 21st century, the financial advice sector also needs to undergo wholesale reform and change. Financial advice is often viewed as too expensive, or individuals worry that they don't have enough to invest. These outdated perceptions of the sector need to change, and to do so, the sector needs to become more transparent and needs to move towards set fees on an hourly rate or a project fee basis, helping make accessing financial advice more affordable and easier. As there's a large amount of worry and mistrust around the financial services industry, making the advice sector more transparent would certainly help boost confidence and trust in consumers that they're getting the right advice. The inherent unfairness of percentage-based charging is clear. Charging double the fee to do a £200,000 investment over a £100,000 investment is simply wrong. It literally takes no more time and no more resource to do that work. Even factoring in slightly more indemnity risk to the advisor for advising on a higher sum, it certainly wouldn't justify anything like doubling the fee. And I firmly believe that the public should seek out advisors who charge fees expressed in pounds and pence and give a quotation for services which is based on time expected or a fixed project fee rather than percentage-based.
Would my honourable friend agree?
Certainly.
Would you agree with me then that many of these providers that give pensions advice should actually be putting their fees and charges very explicitly on websites and other promotional materials so that people can see from the start of the start of the process what those costs would be.
I very much do agree with my honourable friend, and it is incumbent on advisors now, when they're seeing clients for the first time, to give them what we call an initial disclosure document, which sets out the fees and charges that a client can rightly expect to pay. And the expression of the fees should always be completely upfront and agreed to by the client before any work is undertaken. So absolutely a vital part of the process for sure. But too many consumers are missing out on the potential opportunities that advice can bring because of this lack of understanding, or this perception that advice is too expensive. So it's time that we look to develop the financial advice sector and make it work for consumers. I urge the Minister, therefore, to continue to develop awareness of financial advice and guidance service and make it as accessible as possible so that the advice gap around pensions can be closed. One area of pensions where the advice gap is intrinsically linked is costs and charges associated with pensions. In many cases, the associated costs and charges, whether that be the annual management charge or underlying fund charges, are too much of a focus for consumers and advisors and the regulator and policy, to the detriment of the performance and quality of the actual pension. Instead of focusing on which contract is the cheapest, more time and guidance needs to be shared considering the end result and the outcome. This is what will be available to pensioners, and this is what will impact the quality of their retirement. Even though pension costs may be more expensive, if a contract has the propensity to generate higher returns, then it will give a better end result for the individual. In addition, as many people don't seek financial advice regarding their pensions, as mentioned earlier, many will lack the knowledge to understand the full impact of any costs and charges, often leading to people to just choose the cheapest contract, which may well not benefit their situation. But the principle of having lower charges and less of a drag on performance is a noble principle, but it doesn't always work out that principles follow through to superior outcomes. It's the outcomes that people can spend in retirement, not the principle. And as a final topic, Mr Hosey, this would not be right to hold a debate which looks to improve people's future in retirement if we don't consider how to ensure that the pension industry is becoming green and playing its part in protecting the environment. With pension funds globally holding around $20 trillion in assets and being long-term investments, they are an integral part of socially responsible investing and can play a major part in helping the UK to reach net zero. And I'll commend, in his absence, my honourable friend, the member for Grantham, in his campaign that has led to the UK coming out with its first green investment bond, which is on the horizon. According to the Make My Money Matter campaign, sustainable pensions are 27 times more impactful in reducing your carbon footprint than stopping air travel and following a plant-based diet combined. 27 times. Looking across the whole fund universe, relatively few pension funds have fully embraced socially responsible investing or incorporated environmental, social and governance factors into their processes. And whilst some people have suggested that the government should force private pension schemes to invest in a socially responsible way, that feels like an overreach and an inappropriate use of power, and counterproductive, as it may well encourage disinvestment. The bottom line to keep in mind is that pensions are there to provide retirement income first and foremost, and if we can save the planet afterwards, then that's an extra bonus. But 68% of UK savers want their investments to consider people and planet alongside profits, while 71% would opt for a fully or partially sustainable pension if they had the choice, showing the demand for socially responsible investment of pensions. Now, the Pension Schemes Bill has recently created a task force on climate-related financial disclosures that puts the consumer in charge and increases the transparency of pension funds regarding investments. It's clearly a demand in the UK for socially responsible investing within pension funds. The government aims to facilitate that, as shown with this task force, and I do commend them for it and look forward to seeing how it develops. So to conclude, Mr Hosey, as I mentioned at the beginning, pension policy is a topic which can often be overlooked. It's overly complex, it's too technical, and it's not relevant to the many immediate pressing issues of the day. But it doesn't have to be overlooked. Pensions policy is a topic which is incredibly important and will impact all of us in later life as we look to retire. And it's the responsibility of all of us to look at how we can shape it positively to provide the best retirement for as many people as possible. The contributions and sacrifices that our older citizens have made throughout this pandemic and indeed throughout their lives are considerable, and it's only right that our policies recognise and reflect that hard work, allowing them to live out their retirement in comfort with the peace of mind that their pension will see them through. I welcome the contributions from colleagues as well as from the Minister and the Shadow Minister. Whilst great strides have been achieved through the Pension Schemes Bill, there's always more to do if we want our pensioners to have the retirement they so rightly deserve.